We are here in the Shaheen Bagh. Aditya and we finally made it to this venue. I know everyone is talking about women and children being here. As I understand it, women and children being here means, of course, what in people like Judith Butler call the alliance of bodies, where people actually come here and they live here, they stay here. What she calls even the private domestic domain, which is out here in the public square on the road. People are sleeping here, people are staying here. There's distribution of food. What otherwise is called, it's like defining a form of life. There's a particular kind of life which has emerged around this space. And to people here, we were actually joking earlier, it looks like completely normal. Actually, life outside this space, the life which is outside this zone, that might feel abnormal to the people here. So when the police is saying you should remove this, it feels like, no, come on, we have defined a kind of a life here, a new relations, a new way of being that is being defined here, what is called a new form of life. But before I come to this, something about which we have talked a lot and many people have talked about this, we want to focus on the layout of this place, the kind of urban space that this neighborhood is, Shaheen Bagh is. And what is also there today, we know that a lot of people are talking about replicating Shaheen Bagh elsewhere. So in terms of the subjective forces here, in terms of the movement against the National Register for Citizens, in terms of the movement against the Citizenship Amendment Act, of course, the goals of this Shaheen Bagh are similar to the other protest sites in Delhi as well as outside this country. But I think Shaheen Bagh has something more specific to it, and that's why it has been able to endure for this long. And the layout of this place, the urban terrain that you see, on the one hand you will see in fact all four sides are like there's a kind of a barricade which the movement has against the entry of any kind of police forces or the entry of the kind of right-wing vigilante groups that we saw entered the JNU campus. So on both sides of the road there are barricades. I'll come to that, but before that I want to show on one side of this. In fact, let's talk about first, I think, the neighborhood here, which is the Abu Fazal enclave, of which Shaheen Bagh is a part. So this is along the road. You see this big stores are there. These are what are called factory outlets. But these factory outlets actually they look very big and glass and steel kind of stores here. But behind it is a dense neighborhood with narrow streets. There is a 40-footer road. Those kind of small roads are there, and this means that the police to enter with their vehicles, the way so-called modern police forces enter, they cannot enter from this side because the roads are too narrow for that. So you see this. This is the Abu Fazal enclave, and it's densely populated. So even if plain clothes people were to enter from here, like what we saw in JNU, I think in the video we are not able to show you the neighborhood, but we'll show it separately. Then it's very difficult because they will be identified, and the people here in the neighborhood are friendly. They are at one with this protest, so it's difficult for them to enter from this side. Now across the road from this Abu Fazal enclave, on the other side of the road you see there is a steep fall from the road. So you see that you can show that bus stand here and the footsteps of the bridge. Aditya, if you can show the bridge. Yeah, so after this bridge you see there's a steep fall, and then there is what is called Shram Bihar. That is a urban cluster there, and those people are also friendly to the protest. And after the Shram Bihar, in the distance you can see those high tension wires. There you have the metro depot, and the metro depot has long walls running parallel to this road. So even from that direction, it's difficult for the police or vigilante groups to enter and try to use violence against the protest site here. Now let's come to the both sides, the two sides of the road. One is of course at the distance, as you can see, you see the tent there. That's the main where the speeches are happening, where women and children are gathered, where everybody is gathered. And on the other side, you see the other end of the road is this side. And this is something which I have done a little video earlier on this, which is that something very interesting. You can't see the police even along the road, right? So if the police cannot enter because there's a dense, narrow alley, narrow street neighborhood on the one side, and there's a kind of a steep fall on the other side, then you could have imagined that they could come through the roads. The reason why you don't see police even at the furthest end of this road is that there are barricades put up by the local volunteers of the movement, and this is not just one, but there are 2-3 barricades like that. And after those barricades manned by the volunteers, there is this at least like say 60-70 meters long, meters wide no man's land. And at the end of the no man's land, it's only then that you have the police barricade. So the police is really further away. So there is that kind of bitterness which you see in other protest sites where the police is right there across the barricade, and you are often exchanging those bitter glances with the police, and the kind of animosity which develops there. Here, and the same thing is there on the other side. The same kind of barricades manned by volunteers. So what you see is that you really feel like this is a open space of freedom here. It feels like a little enclave of freedom here, which might be quite fanciful in the sense that, of course, things haven't changed really much in wider society. But here you feel that in Shaheen Bagh, this is a kind of a self-subsisting new form of life that is going on. But what we see then is that often we end up emphasizing too much on the subjective forces, on the commitment of the people, of the women and the children. But we should keep in mind that Shaheen Bagh has also been favored by these the objective location of this place. So this dense urban neighborhood also, of course, reminds us of other instances. If you read the literature on Palestine, then you see that the Israeli Defense Forces, whenever they try to enter the kind of dense neighborhoods of Gaza, they just couldn't do that, and they would often be defeated. And the IDF had to really invent new ways to deal with guerrillas there. You had the same thing that the US faced in this place called Fallujah when they were again dealing with the dense urban neighborhood. So what is going on is that you have this highway. This is a big way, this is like, you can think of it as a supply chain, as a logistics thing, and here it feels like time is suspended. The usual temporality that you see in your normal society or in capitalist society, here that is suspended, and this protest has suspended that. So when people are talking about in the newspapers, we see this, that it's taking now 4 hours to drive around this protest site, and it's difficult for us to reach the office or to come back home from office. So what you see is that this is challenged things at multiple levels. So the commuters who are being inconvenienced, they are also having to sit up and think about it. So this is creating a real, not just a problem for the commuters, but I would say they have also been forced to think about what is going on and not just treat it as another media news, oh, there is yet another protest. Because what happens is, say a protest like Jantar Mantar, say a protest like in JNU. Take the example of JNU protests. The students there, they protest and then they go back to their hostel mess and have their food, and then they sleep in the beds. Here, there is no separate staff who will provide you the mess food, who will maintain your hostel, the caretakers and all of that. It's as though those people themselves have come and not just the students who are provided for by a different governmental agency. So this is a real protest in that sense, you see. So, so what you see is that here the local businesses are also part of it. So the food that is coming here, that the tea that is being distributed here, the tent that is being provided here, the sound system, the mic system that is being provided here, there's a local business component here. In fact, the local business here is divided, from what I can learn, between those people who are providing for a lot of these things here, a lot of the supplies and services here, and those who own some of these big stores here, those factory outlets, who are not happy with this, you know. So there is that component as well. But with this video, all that we want to do is that we want to focus on this urban layout, this terrain. And this reminds me, you know, way back in the mid-19th century, Friedrich Engels was writing in the housing question, and when he wrote on the condition of the working class, those two works, where he refers to the rise of the boulevard, you know, the big roads. And as you know, staying in Delhi, we know that Lutyens' Delhi was a colonial construct. So Lutyens' Delhi, as a colonial administrative area, which was precisely made to facilitate colonial rule, and so that if there is an uprising by the natives, it's very easy to quash that. And in fact, there is in a strange way, I mean, of course, Engels is then talking about Haussmann, who had, you know, constructed these kind of boulevards for the first time in Paris. And Paris, Europe that time was undergoing upheavals of the working classes. And Engels really talks about urban architecture and how that is related to the way the state tries to control, you know, the movements, the uprisings of the underclass. But in a strange irony, when recently there was the JNU movement against fee hike, and the JNU students wanted to do a protest, and the police was stopping them. But because outside of JNU you have this again dense urban neighborhood, you have the DDA flats, you have the Munirka Gaon, so students could escape the police. And then they finally again, so in ones and twos or in small groups they come out, they again regroup near the Safdarjung flyover at Safdarjung Madrasa. What is the interesting thing about Safdarjung Madrasa? Safdarjung Madrasa is the point from which Lutyens' Delhi starts. And it's precisely at that Lutyens' Delhi, okay, a kind of architecture which favors the state forces, which favors colonial forces. It's precisely there that the lathi charge takes place against the JNU students. And so you see that. So urban spaces are designed in such a way that whenever there is a kind of a real resistance from the underclass, from the radicals, then it's easy to crush them by using force. Shaheen Bagh is such a space that it's very difficult to do that. It's not that here people might have consciously chosen this, but it just so happened that things have fallen in place for Shaheen Bagh. So whenever we are trying to repeat Shaheen Bagh anywhere else, we have to keep these logistical things in mind, which might also be, you know, it's part of thinking about urban struggles and how you conduct urban struggles in such a way that you do not just keep in mind, you know, the kind of levels of commitment, political commitment of the people here. Like, so of course we cannot underestimate the levels of political commitment to the fighting the BJP, to fighting the NRC and CAA of the people here. But we also need to keep in mind these wider things about urban architecture and urban space. So I'll stop here.